I'm Jemima Latelli. I am a junior majoring in graphic design, and today I invited Reneé Seward to sit down with me and have a conversation of what it means to be a Black designer and, more importantly, a Black woman. She's going to share both her personal and professional achievements in her field, and I'm excited to get started. Hi. Hey, Reneé, how's it going?
And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and just have like a casual conversation with me. And I guess my first question is just tell me a little bit about yourself, like what makes Reneé Rene, basically.
So I am a professor at the University of Cincinnati, an associate professor, and I also run the communication design program. So I like to say that I have three jobs. I run the program, I teach, and then I do design research. So current stuff in design research that I'm working on, like I just got off a call with a research team, a collaborative research team of speech pathologists, educational psychologists, and myself, where we're developing this new game that is controlled by your tongue to help children with speech issues correct their speech. And so we're using gamification. We're building this game that they will control the different aspects of the game with their tongue. And when they're using and placing the tongue properly, they'll achieve their goals. So it's kind of fun, and I love collaborating with the team. I'm learning so much there. And then I have my own research that I'm working on, and we're currently, I shared in that package with you, some new tools that we're hoping to develop to help not just young kids, which has been my focus for so long, but people of any ages who are struggling to read, help them read the things that they actually want to read. So tools that we're hypothesizing that use augmented reality to tools that can be web tools used on your phone.
Gotcha. That's amazing. Honestly, that was one of my favorite of your projects that you've done. So my question with that, was that specifically targeted to underfunded schools, or was that supposed to be broadcasted to schools all over?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, when I started this project, I was down at North Carolina State. It was my thesis that bore out everything that I work on here today. And I started by going into private schools that were teaching kids who were struggling to reading to look at their strategies that they were using. And then the question I started asking myself is, there's a lot of kids sitting in public school that have these same issues, but aren't afforded the privilege of the small classroom with the sand and all the other techniques that they have. So my question is, how do I take what I'm seeing there and translate it with technology so that it can be impactful inside of larger public school classrooms? So yeah, it could be inner city, it could be rural areas. There's a lot of rural areas here in the Cincinnati area that have struggling need as well. So my thought is that like technology, some of the stuff that I'm playing with, the schools are not using right now, right? It's out of scope for a public school, but it will eventually get there. And probably by the time I get finished working on it, it will be accessible. When I first started working on the kids app, iPads weren't even around. I was hypothesizing on how touchscreen technology would impact education. And in the space and time of teaching and developing it as like a little engine that could, you know, iPads and other tablets took off. And so, yeah, most classrooms that you see, because it's often a question like, do inner city classrooms even have, you know, iPads and things like that? They all, for the most part, do. They don't have a 1-to-1 ratio for the students. It might be a set of them that gets used between 5 classes, but most of them have this type of technology. The challenges with technology is real because the Wi-Fi system and all of that, them having access through things like that, prevents large challenges. So I think as I look at what's happening in education during this time of this pandemic, analog methods are also incredibly important as well. So this hybrid method of the analog and technology, I think, is probably going to be most useful.
Okay, great. Well, tell me a little bit about like what was your career like after graduating from the College of Design? Was it something that you just stumbled into, or was your career path something that was more planned? Tell me a little bit about how your life changed after graduation.
So I would say before I got there, I was working for a studio where we did design work for like Nickelodeon and Disney, Nick Jr. Magazine. And, we did packaging for Bath and Body Works. If the Cincinnati Reds needed a Batmobile, we was trying to figure out how to put bats on a car for the opening day parade. So like it was full of creativity. And we did product licensing where I was able to develop a line of products of girls of color that helped motivated them towards positive images. And that was all fun, but I needed to pivot into something that felt a little bit more service oriented, which was one of my big reasons for coming back to graduate school and learn how to ask more questions so I could pivot into something more service oriented. So graduating from there, I thought, my big goal was to stay South and to keep doing fun design. But, the pull up north pulled me back up here to Cincinnati. They asked me if I would come and teach. And I was like, but prior to that, I was like, I've already done everything there is to do in Cincinnati. No reason to go back. Up until them saying, well, you want to teach in DAP? And I'm like, I've never done that before. So I got to go try it out and I'll do it until it stops being fun. So it did allow me to pivot into something that was more service oriented because teaching is more service oriented. I did not know I was going to be a teacher. It was not a dream of mine to be a teacher, but I needed to at least explore it. And I think it was the right move for me because teaching, I enjoy helping students understand things, but it also gives me my own space and time to ask the questions that I want to ask of what design could do and how design could influence and help my community, as well as anyone that's struggling with anything. And it gives me the space to be able to do that, but also be able to feed myself. So it works out.
Yeah, and I think that as Black designers, we just have such a unique perspective. So how did you tap into this unique perspective as a Black designers, and how do you even use it now in your designing?
So I'm kind of old, in relation to the young people who are in design school now. And I feel like I've experienced some things from what design was when I was in undergraduate education, even prior to that. And I remember, like, for example, one of the bigger things that I recall outside of being the only one always is that the use of images that contained Black people had a certain message that it sent from the eyes of the people, the clients and things that I would work for. And that wasn't my view of it. So one of the funnier stories is sometimes they say, hey, Renee, I need you to draw an angel for something. And so I go and draw it and it's a Black angel. If it's an angel, it's going to look like me. And then the client was like, I got to open up this market of who it's for, the people who have that buying power. And so I was like, okay, I'll make them Latino. Or then I moved to Asian, like I'd slow go it until finally I'm like, I know what you want. You want a white blonde angel, but like that isn't normal. That isn't regular or average. Whenever you brought in a person of color, they would say, well, it's talking about diversity or it's talking about people of color, which isn't really our target audience. So I started stepping away and say, well, I don't feel like I'm the target audience of the things that I work on. And that bothers me, I even remember another company that I was working for and we were making packages and we were prototyping packages and they just needed hands to be in there for instructions on how this technology worked. And I was like, yeah, we could put my hands in there. And I was told, no, we can't use your hands because we got to look, we got to find hands that are neutral, that just focuses on the product. And when you put in hands of color, then we're talking about things of, for a particular race or diversity. And I'm like, what? These are just hands for me, And so again, I want to point out this was a long time ago. And now I'm happy to go down the aisles of Target and see packages that have hands of multiple colors. But there was a time that was the perception of how it worked. And so that view of things always paused me, like what people saw as like, yeah, this is just focusing on this type of communication. but I'm happy to see that things evolved, and we can see things of color and not think it's just for diversity. And I say all that to say is that I think that I'm often shocked at how the majority views and reads things, and it's different from mine. And I think that is because I'm Black and I come from a different perspective. And so I just now, for a while, I have the ability to voice, well, I don't see it that way, or I view it in this way, or I create it. And then they say, oh, wow, I never thought of it like that. And that's why I think it's important that design companies and teams, they have to have that diversity. And I know they like to say diversity of thought. And I think what helps diversity of thought is diversity of people.
And did you have the ideology of pushing the envelope as a student, or did that come after graduation?
I think as a student, I could voice myself pretty well. I have to go back. You could go back and ask my old professors. I think they would say it, and they were actually encouraging of it. I remember one time, they had us interviewing different designers, and the designer handed to me was Ivan Chermayeff, and I was doing all this book research on it, and finally one of my professors said, he's living. Call him up and ask them questions, and also ask him, where's the Black people in design, and when are they coming? And I was like, really? You think I should go there with them? And he said, yeah, go for it. And, Ivan Chermayeff, he took a great deal of time to answer my questions very thoughtfully, and I'm glad that they helped foster that voice to me.
Out of curiosity, how many other Black students did you study with in college? What was the ratio?
So there were only two of us, me and my friend Nicole. We like to call ourselves the chocolate chips. So it was just the two of us in our particular cohort, which was probably made up of maybe 40, 45 students in undergrad. And then in graduate school, I was the only one, and we had a very small class in my particular year at North Carolina State. There were only 4 of us in my class, but then the class above us, I think there were 10 or so. It was very small numbers. It was good.
Yeah, it's similar here. Mm-hmm.
I'm a professor here, and so I see the admissions types of things, and I would say that it's not just a problem in North Carolina State. It's a problem everywhere. And, maybe even North Carolina State is doing better than other places. But I do think it's not, it is a matter of African Americans even entering the pool to want to go to design school, like you're saying. And so that work needs to push itself back to elementary and middle school. Often people ask me, well, how'd you get into design? And I often say I credit my mother, who when I was 15 said that the summer that I was 15, you have to go out and get a job, or, you work for McDonald's. And McDonald's is cool. It's a good job, summer job. But I just didn't want to work there. I wanted to do something art-wise. And I found this brochure in the guidance counselor's office in high school, where the University of Cincinnati was having a summer program targeted towards Black students, where they gave us jobs all summer long in different design fields. And they paid us to be in those jobs, just paid us slightly bit more than I would make in McDonald's, which totally made it worth it. You got to do art, and you get paid better than going to work there. And what that did is to open my eyes over the span of the summer is, yeah, this is a viable job. Yeah, I'm gonna make money. Look at so-and-so, over here. I could do this. And it helped also my parents, to see that I had the work ethic, and look at the other people and the salaries and everything like that. So yeah, I think that we have a lot of work to do going back into the elementary and middle schools to pull this forward.
Yeah, and I think that you just have so much wisdom as a designer and as a Black woman in this country. So what message would you like to give to Black students in design? What do you think that they need to hear?
I would say that our presence in this discipline is needed. Mm-hmm. And I want to implore you to come, because I think that we are helpful to a lot of the disciplines out there in addressing their visual communication problems or even experience problems. But in order to effectively do it, our voices are necessary. Our thoughts and our minds and the backgrounds that we come through are necessary to address the problems that are ahead of us in this world. So I want them to go out there. I want them to be comfortable regardless of who else is in the room. And I want them to speak the knowledge that they know. I don't want anybody to enter in and say, am I good enough or should I be saying this? Speak what you know. You deserve a seat. You got the seat. Take the seat and change the world.
If your mother had not encouraged you to pursue your passions, where do you think you'd be right now?
Well, I still thought I wanted to either be an artist, a fine artist, or an architect. So that experience helped me know, because I got a job, they gave me a job working for the City of Cincinnati Architects Division. And it helped me to know that I didn't want to be an architect, but they had a graphic design division there that did experiential design, and I loved it. So I would probably have majored in architecture and then not liked it and maybe found a pathway over to a different program, but it probably could have been interiors, it could have been horticulture or landscape architecture. Like sometimes as I didn't know what landscape architecture was or that was a thing when I was in school. And since I've been an adult and had to collaborate on some projects with landscape architects, I'm like, this is cool. I think that if I hadn't been doing what I'm doing, I probably would have been a landscape architect. But, as I do the research that I'm doing now, a lot of times I also wonder, would I have been an educator or a literacy specialist of some sort like that? So who knows?
Yeah, and I think that there has to be like a bridge there. There has to be a bridging of younger students and younger people to the College of Design and to let them know that there's a career here. So what do you think we can do to encourage people, especially the younger generation, to learn more about design and how to engage with design as a possible career?
I think thankfully there are a lot of design camps out there, like seated inside of universities. Like I know that North Carolina State has one because I used to work that camp when I was a graduate student. But even outside of universities, Black designers have picked up the mission of starting their own organizations where they tackle different design problems. I would go and be a part of those. I think the type of people that we're looking for, I need you to be humble and hungry, but I also need you to be a curious person. You don't know how it works, but you're interested in knowing how it works. You got ideas on maybe how to make it better. You don't know how to fix it or do it, and you're not scared of that. You're going to dive straight in and fail forward. And you're good with that. I'm gonna ask a lot of good, crazy questions. I'm gonna make a lot of stuff. I don't care if most of it don't work out. I'm just here and down for the exploration of it. And I think that curiosity is one of the bigger things that you need. You need to be curious and you need to feel as though you're a geyser of ideas. And I think that that's what a client would need out of us. It's okay if they don't like what I do the first time. It doesn't make me not successful or an inability to do it. That's just a step in this long process. Fail and keep failing forward. High five yourself when it don't work out, because there is a solution and you don't want to make it. You don't want to find it.
Yeah, one of my bigger questions I wanted to ask you today is, what do you think about representation? How do you feel when you are representing your culture or you're taking on the task of being a role model? Is it crushing or is it liberating?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do feel like the pressure, whatever pressures the majority feel when you're a minority in the space, it can be double of that. And you want to say and do the right thing. And then when you think about, my culture is going to hear what I say there. Am I representing them and saying the right terms? Like a lot of times I tell people, like, you are Black. You are. And how you feel is a thought there. None of us completely agree with each other. So just share your own truths inside of that and stand on the fact that this is Renee's truth, And I hope that there are some other people get behind it, but this is Renee's truth. I want to be a good role model. I want to be the type of person that allows a lot more people that are like me, Black girls, to stand on my shoulder and go further than what I go. But I want that to be my goal. So it's a hard question because I don't necessarily know the answer to it. I feel comfortable speaking my own truth about things. And I feel like I always have. My mother talks about my militants even back in kindergarten. And I was in all white spaces there, and everybody got to hold the flag at the beginning of class when we said the Pledge of Allegiance. And from my perspective, the teacher every day was allowing all the white people to hold the flag, but I wouldn't get my turn. And so finally I went up to her and I said, every day you got everybody else holding this flag and I ain't got to hold it yet. So tomorrow I'm holding the flag. And so the teacher like felt like awkward, like, oh my gosh, she thinks I'm discriminating, but she wasn't. She was just doing alphabetical order, and my name is S, and she hadn't gotten there yet. But from my perspective, like, I saw a problem and an issue, and I spoke on it, and I was helping her address that issue. So I feel like I've always been okay with just speaking my truth, and you know, people can disagree or not disagree. I'm anxious about it, but I always end up doing it. Mm-hmm. I think there's lots of good discussions. And when you have diverse voices, you can hear everybody's perspective, you know? You can hear the Latinx perspective, you can hear the Black perspective, the white perspective, immigrant perspective. It is all super important, even those with disabilities and how they view things. I think the love in my research is dealing with people who can't read and seeing the world from their perspective and how they solve problems. It like makes me aware as a person that's different from them and how you can see it. So difference is good.
All right. And for my final question, with the world as it is today, the BLM movements, the pandemic, the shooting of unarmed Black men, the election, and everything else in the world, how do you feel like you used your work in response to these things? Do you feel like you've done a good job responding to the state of the world as it is today?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting question. As I said, I work 3 jobs. So teaching in and of itself and teaching during the pandemic and dealing with the financial issues from an administrator perspective has been huge, right? And so there's this pandemic that's happening that's huge inside of education and what I'm working on. And then there's all the social issues. So right as Ahmaud Arbery had been killed, who was out running, I'm a runner, you know, and I felt that situation deeply. And at the same time, the AIGA was reaching out, asking us to create, well, they had reached out prior, asking us to create, if we would be interested in creating posters for voting. And at the time I was like, yeah, that ain't due to the summer. I'll say yes and then come back later. And so now I'm Ahmaud Arbery, and now it's time for me to work on this. And this was supposed to be something that talked about the woman's right to vote. And as I was reading that, but also realizing what was happening in the world, I was just getting angry. I'm like, women's right to vote. Let's talk about Black's right to vote. Like this coming year, Black's right to vote. And how do we get at the polls? Because there's a lot that needs to change. And so as I was creating that poster, I think all of the emotions, the stuff that was happening, I was just making stuff in response to it and having fun and actually not being on the computer and having fun with it. And then I came back in the computer to ultimately compose the final poster that I would hand out to the AIGA. And I was thinking, okay, I don't know if they're going to like this or not like it, but I'm going to put it out there because I think that as a Black woman, my identity as Black sometimes supersedes just the issues that deals with a woman. And so I needed to talk about that in that poster that I made, hopefully talking to other Black women saying, dudes, we have got to get to the polls. We got to vote. There's some stuff that's got to change. So I was happy that opportunity came my way, and I'm in a position where I can make what I want, say what I want. Slightly nervous how it was going to be received, but internally it was like a woosah moment for me. I put it all out in that poster that was made, and I'm happy to see that it was received well. I think that also in this space, outside of just doing design and the role of being a teacher, you know, the Black students that are here in the program at the University of Cincinnati, there's another level of support, you know, that we all need, and we all need each other during this time just to talk about the feelings and what does this mean even to the profession that we've signed up into.
Well, Reneé, thank you so much for taking the time just to sit with me and just to share your life and being a part of this exhibit. We truly want to honor you in the ways that you have paved the way as a designer and a Black designer at that. So thank you again. And I'm just so excited to see the final product of this.
Awesome. Well, if you need anything, I'm here. And I hope we can keep stomping and kicking down some walls. We're going to need to do it together.
Yeah, I'm willing. Let's work on it together.